Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of All Access AM. I am Billy Embody. Thanks for joining us on this Wednesday morning. We're live 8 to 9 a.m. Central Time this morning, and appreciate all of you who are tuning in with us wherever you're catching us, whether that be Twitter, YouTube, on the podcast feed, wherever. We appreciate you guys for being here. We've got a great show for you guys today. Tons of ACC action in the basketball world to go over from Tuesday night. We have Monday's action as well, plus Wednesday night preview. But we'll also continue our look around the country. Well, that's because the ACC spans coast to coast. But we'll continue our look around the country at ACC teams and their offseason in football and some of the storylines ahead of spring football. And today, we'll have Noah Fleischman of the Wolfpacker join us on the show. He'll talk NC State. How are Dave Dorian and company trying to upgrade around CJ Bailey? We'll get into that with Noah Fleischman here of the On3 Rivals Network in just a little bit. 8:15 a.m. Central Time is when he'll join us. We're excited to have Noah on, one of the hardest working guys in the biz. So appreciate him making some time for us on this Wednesday, and appreciate Jerry Morphew for chiming in the chat. Hi, Billy. Really looking forward to the game tonight. That's right. SMU takes on Miami in a critical matchup for the Mustangs for sure. Miami looking to continue to build their NCAA tournament resume better and better, but SMU down the last two games, losing at Cal and Stanford. They need a bounce back tonight on senior night in Moody Coliseum to really kind of lock in their NCAA tournament bid. Huge game in Moody Coliseum tonight, and we appreciate Jerry for chiming in right off the bat. Let's do this. We've got Noah Fleischman in about 12 minutes now, but let's go back to Monday night's ACC action. But before we do that, I do want to remind you that we are presented by our friends at OPW Solutions. OPW Solutions is your spot where you can get the lowdown on how they can help your business in the commercial services space, whether it be commercial landscaping, power washing, snow and ice control, that parking lot maintenance that you need, Christmas lights. You can plan ahead and get that all situated, and fence maintenance and beyond. Our friends at OPW Solutions can help you work through that. You can give them a call, 214-444-2305, or email them at info@opwsolutions.com. His AJ Crow's team continues to work round the clock for those who are dealing with some of the poor weather in North Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and beyond. A lot of rain in the region, so I'm sure they'll have their hands full managing some of the landscaping that they do around this area. But if you're in this area, make sure you reach out to OPW Solutions, proud supporters of the ACC and our show here, All Access AM. Let's jump into Monday night's action. We'll ask Noah Fleischman about this briefly on his football breakdown, of course. But NC State falls to Duke at home, 93-64. 28-2 now for the Blue Devils, 16-1 in ACC play. NC State 19-11, 10-7 in ACC play. NC State, we'll talk about them and where they stand with Noah in just a little bit. But Duke continues to roll here. Cam Boozer, 26 points, 9 rebounds in this game. Just an absolute drubbing by Duke. They led by 17 at half. They shot 55% from the field. You continue to see some of the double-digit scoring efforts from Isaiah Evans step up. 4 of the 5 starters were in double figures, and Duke rolled. This was a pretty easy game to watch. Not much drama here. But NC State is in a weird spot right now, having lost 5 of their last 6. We'll talk with Noah briefly about that ahead of their final game this weekend at home against Stanford. So we'll be tracking that, no question about it. But Duke gets a win. They continue to sit on that 1 seed line and the number 1 overall seed, as we talked about with our friend James Fletcher on Monday, breaking that down. And obviously, Duke played that night after our show, but continued to keep things rolling in the right direction. So Duke continues to step up in a big way, trying to boost the ACC. We do have some news around the league on the football side of things that we'll touch on as well. Stanford has announced James Mosley as their new defensive line coach. Switching to the football side of things, Mike Tuiasosopo is coming over from Kansas State to be the assistant defensive line coach for James Mosley. And Tuiasosopo going to focus on the interior of the defensive line. James Mosley played linebacker at Alabama. I remember watching him during some of those Alabama teams that won national championships, including two when he was a member of the Crimson Tide in 2015-17. And he went undrafted and bounced around a little bit and then ended up being on the Alabama coaching staff for the last 5 seasons. He now heads over to work for Tavita Pritchard on the West Coast. James Mosley embodies everything we want in a Stanford football coach: competitor, connector, and a championship mindset coming from Tavita Pritchard. And of course, they're stepping up, I think, that mindset of winning that they're trying to change at Stanford. And that is really what they found in him, is, being a part of the excellent defenses of Alabama during that time, and, being around college football coaching. This is his time, his opportunity. So Tavita Pritchard makes that hire and also brings in Tuiasosopo. He was at Kansas State for 7 years and now joins Stanford's coaching staff as the assistant defensive line coach. And this is a really kind of smart move for a young head coach, because you've got the young, kind of, you would think, energetic, fiery, excitable young coach in James Mosley. And then you have somebody who's a veteran of it in Mike Tuiasosopo. So he comes over and they can kind of work together. We're seeing that a lot across college football. It's being built out more like NFL teams, where they have these, assistant coaches, whatever they may be. They may be seasoned, they may be young, but you also have an assistant to them that has that, ability to kind of work in both spaces. So I think, for Stanford, they continue to build things out in the right way. So I think when you look at Tavita Pritchard and what they're doing out there in Stanford, this is a long build for Stanford. This is not a build that is going to happen overnight. They're going to have to do it from the high school side of things. They look like they're elevating in the recruiting aspect as well, with just who they're being talked about for. Andrew Luck, got to spend some time with him this fall when Stanford was at SMU. And, they really have this large kind of master plan about what they want Stanford football to look like. And they want it to get back to what it was like when when Andrew Luck was there, certainly, and bring that back and bring that type of mindset to Stanford football. And we saw that in their, win over Cal to really kind of force the firing of Justin Wilcox, when they really played that brand of football that you kind of saw little bits and pieces of over the course of this past season. And look, Stanford was, I would say, a tough out throughout a lot of their games this fall. Maybe they put it together in the next round of things, but when you see who they've brought on staff, I like it. I think Stanford is just going to be one of those programs that we're going to watch Tavita Pritchard kind of grow up on the job, and they're going to be patient with that growing and with that process that it takes. And they can do that because they have Andrew Luck at the helm. They're not going to look at this program and kind of blow it up in a sense, unless, it really craters. But, Stanford is at a point where I don't want to say it can't be worse, but they can kind of go up in so many ways. Like, they can't take tons of steps back, just because, they've been able to kind of settle down the waters around it, at least with Andrew Luck at the helm. And then they can go out and, handpick their head coach because they had a year to do it. They can go out and look at some of the things in fundraising that they need to do to kind of pinpoint the areas that they can work on. Like, they bring in Terry Heffernan, a veteran offensive coordinator, to work with Tavita Pritchard as he comes to the college game. And, Tavita Pritchard's that young guy who's got that experience, from being with the Washington Commanders and tutoring Jaden Daniels at the next level. Well, Terry Heffernan's been a college coach for a long, long time, and they can kind of work off of each other in that regard. They bring in Chris Richard as their defensive coordinator, and a veteran of the NFL and somebody where he can look at defenses and coordinate them at a high level and find what fits in the college game. Those are all things that Stanford's kind of check the boxes with. They have a nice, I think, balance of that NFL mindset that you'd kind of expect from an Andrew Luck program, while also knowing that it's the college game and you're trying to find things that work in this new era of, well, the player acquisition piece is an Andrew Luck and scouting department and recruiting department thing, whereas the coaches are there to coach. So it really, it really just is one of those things where we've seen Stanford kind of press all these buttons and things like that, and I think we'll see how it goes. But Stanford continues to be a program that I think we'll at least watch over here in the middle of the country, right, based out of Dallas. It's a lot easier to watch those West Coast teams try to put things together, of course, with so many things happening outside of our time zones in ACC country. But Stanford continues to build out their coaching staff under Tavita Pritchard, and it'll be interesting to watch it unfold. So Stanford did make that hire, so that was a quick note. But now we are happy to be joined by Noah Fleischman of the Wolfpacker, and we're here to talk about Dave Dorian's offseason. We'll also touch on Will Wade a little bit, his first season with the Wolfpack. But Noah, thanks for joining us this morning. How you doing?
Doing well. How are you doing?
Doing well. It has been one of those almost light weeks for you. I feel like when you get the Monday night game, you get all week to kind of go through everything and look ahead to Saturday's senior night. That's kind of a dream for some of the content pieces around the final home game for any college basketball team. But let's go back to Monday night. NC State, 5 of their last 6 now, unfortunately for the Wolfpack. What's kind of been the key cogs in some of those disappointing results for Will Wade and company?
Yeah, I think you can split it in 2 ways. One, it's just they play better teams. When you play at Virginia, that just is outmatching them, and with 2 7-footers, is nothing much NC State's roster could do in that situation. Duke, in a similar sense, it's the best team in the country at this point, and there wasn't really much they could do. The 2 games that really come back to bite them, though, are Miami and Notre Dame. They led by 7 with less than a minute to play against Miami, lost in regulation. Led by 7 with 3 minutes to go at Notre Dame, lost in overtime. So if you want those 2 games back, then it's a different story we're looking at right now. But, Will Wade's not pleased with those 2 games. The other couple, with Virginia and Duke, he's kind of, content. They don't want to lose, but those were kind of games going in. They thought that, it's not going to be a great matchup for them.
NC State, just put into perspective the work that Will Wade's done to have them in this position in year one.
Yeah, I mean, they went 5-15 in ACC play last year under Kevin Keatts, a year removed from going to the Final Four. They blew it up, got rid of him, brought in Will Wade. This is a team that was trending to get a top 4 seed in the ACC tournament until like a week ago. I mean, they were also trending to get a single-digit seed in the 8 NCAA tournament, which would have been the first time since 2018 that they did that. So, I mean, year one, Will Wade came in. He had 1 scholarship player on the roster, and Paul McNeil. Everyone else left, and he kept the walk-on too, and Jordan Snell. The rest he had to bring in on his own. And so this is an entirely new roster. It's something you're going to see in college basketball every year. But he had to flip it on a hurry, flip it, not as much time as other coaches around the country did, because he did win an NCAA tournament game a year ago at McNeese. He built the roster with what he thought he could do, with what they had available. Brought in Darian Williams from Texas Tech, top 10 transfer portal pickup. Hasn't panned out exactly how they anticipated. Van Allen Lubin in the post has been good, but they're small, and that is coming back to bite them right now. So there's a lot of learning to be done from this season. But when you look at the big picture, they're 19 wins. They could get win number 20 against Stanford on Saturday. Flipping this team from a 5-15 roster in ACC play a year ago to a team that is contending with ACC teams, I think is a really big step for this team. And plus, they're going to be back in the NCAA tournament. I don't really think that they're at stake of falling onto the bubble at this point. So that's a good start. Will came in saying 2 things: I want to be in the top part of the ACC, and I want to make the NCAA tournament. And right now, they're in the top 6 of the ACC, and they're going to make the NCAA tournament. So from that point of view, it's a success for what he wanted to do in year one.
Let's get to football. Spring football probably just weeks away for you, and out there for NC State, and certainly you'll get a look at this transfer portal class that NC State brought in, and really good group. It looks like obviously the big story around that program is going to be CJ Bailey being back, though. The retention efforts for them to keep him with the Wolfpack. Take us behind the scenes a little bit. What went into keeping quarterback CJ Bailey with NC State?
Yeah, he was going to be one of the bigger, portal targets for a lot of teams for a guy who wasn't in the portal at all. And, that was kind of the thought process going in. A lot of teams need quarterbacks. He was one of the best, sophomore quarterbacks in the country a year ago. Started a lot as a freshman with Grayson McCall going down due to concussions. And NC State worked quickly. He was their number one priority, as you expect your quarterback to be, especially in this age where you got to sign him as fast as possible. They got him to sign, and they announced his return on the first day of the portal opening. So it was a perfect scenario for them to build momentum in the transfer portal, saying, hey, our franchise quarterback is back. And then they were able to build from there. And so far, so good. They're looking for them to build on it in spring practice, which started last week. And we'll see how it can go from here. But, I'm sure we'll touch on what they did in the portal. But he was a big reason why they found a lot of success in what they want and what they got in the portal.
When you looked at the needs for this offense in particular, Hollywood Smothers departs. It's a big one. Jacarius Peak out the door. What did you see from the staff as far as how they address some of the needs offensively to give CJ Bailey weapons where he doesn't have to do it all on his own?
Yeah, we can start with Jacarius Peak. He was obviously a top 5 portal player when he left and went to South Carolina. They went and replaced him with Jermarion McCrimmon, a transfer from East Carolina. He was a first-team All-American tackle a year ago. He's probably been playing the right side. They think they're going to flip their right tackle, T. Anderson, to the left, and they'll be okay there. You talk about Hollywood Smothers leaving. They didn't really, that's a tough loss, right? You lose a guy who ran for almost 1,000 yards a year ago, ends up at Texas. But they had a guy in Duke Scott, who was a redshirt freshman a year ago. They were really excited about. He's going to look to be, running back 1 going into spring. Then they brought in Davion Goss from North Carolina to be that number 2 back, and they're really excited about that. The bigger losses, though, came in the pass catching department. Noah Rogers and Terrell Anderson, their 2 top returning receivers, both out the door to the portal. They had to kind of, make work there at the wide receiver position. Brought in 5 wide receivers, headlined by, JoJo Trader from Miami, youth teammate of CJ Bailey, a high school teammate of youth teammate of CJ Bailey, high school teammate of CJ Bailey. So that's kind of where this CJ, coming back really plays off because of the portal guys they brought in. Davion Goss from North Carolina at running back, JoJo Trader from Miami at wide receiver, and Chance Robinson, also a receiver from Miami. Those 3 guys played together growing up, from 8 years old till now. Now they're rekindled back together, and I think NC State wants to tap into, this is a team that in Miami at 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, they were winning national championships, and they want to do it again at NC State.
When you look at the offensive weapons that they've been able to provide, is that enough to take that next step I mean, it seems like there are some other areas, of course, that NC State needed to focus on to make a full football team better and take that next step. But is this, in your mind, kind of a good enough group to get it done?
I think it is. I mean, NC State, they lose your 2 wide receivers. You lost your tight end, Justin Jolie, to, just straight up eligibility running out. But this is an offense that doesn't focus on one receiver. They're pretty balanced when they throw the ball, so I really don't think it impacts too much. They brought in talented players, a lot of former blue chip players that haven't done a lot at the college level. So it's a little different kind of than what some teams might try to do in the portal. They're bringing in guys that first have, relationship with CJ, but second, JoJo Trader is a top 50, high school player coming out of Miami. He played a little bit with the Hurricanes, couldn't really, take the next step. They're trying to get him to take the next step here in his junior season. They do bring in a couple other transfers, Davion Dozier and guys like that, from App State, who's a big play weapon. We'll see how they can use them. But when you look at the receiving core around CJ Bailey, I think it's not going to be as big of a drop as some people believe, just because they don't feed one receiver like they did with KC Concepcion a few years ago. This is a team that will spread the ball around and will, get it to guys that are hot in this certain game. So we'll see, but I think right now, keeping CJ was obviously the biggest target, and that's what they did, and they feel like he can do a lot with all these guys around him.
They add, offensive linemen like Jalen Hampton, Daniel Cruz, some of those players. Offensive line wise, is that the worry still? I mean, it feels like across college football, nobody has the depth, nobody has as much talent as they ever want anymore at key positions in the trenches. Has NC State addressed their group enough, or is that a spot where, like a lot of places around the country, you're going to be looking over your shoulder in a sense?
No, I think they're confident in what they have on the offensive line right now. You have a guy like Jalen Hampton, who they got late. He's 6'9" tackle. He'll be I think their top, reserve tackle, can play either side. You talk about Daniel Cruz. They're going to try him at center first, but maybe move him to guard. Spike Souls is returning. He played a lot as a true freshman last year at guard. He's a guy that can play center. So they're gonna flip those guys around in the interior. They're really excited about other guys coming back, like Rico Jackson at guard. I think we'll see him start this season as well. So they've got depth. I think they feel pretty confident, 7 to 9 guys in the offensive line, which is a good situation to be in, especially if you have injuries and things like that coming up.
And defensively for NC State, I mean, it looks like, Raul Aguirre, from Miami, a key pickup. Andre Evans is a guy I covered coming out of high school who transfers from Georgia, a really, really talented player. They get Harvey Dyson from Tulane. Don't sleep on these transfer pickups on the defensive side of the ball, it seems like.
Yeah, no, Harvey Dyson is the headlining guy on the defensive side. Led the American in sacks a year ago with 8. Had a sack fumble against Ole Miss in the college football playoff. So he's proven he can do it at this big level. They're expecting him to take that 8-sack production and keep it going at NC State. I talk about Andre Evans, a guy who he hasn't played college football in his 2 seasons. Redshirted as a freshman at Georgia, was recovering from a torn ACL last season. They expect him to start. I mean, it is what it is. They expect him to start at corner this season, and I think he can do that. And then you talk about Raul Aguirre. This is a guy who was a rotational linebacker at Miami, played in the national championship game this year. He will start in middle either at middle linebacker or weak side linebacker. They're still figuring that part out. He'll start on the inside at some point, at somewhere, and who they want to play with him, it will kind of determine which spot he's in. But that's a guy that they were really excited about getting from the portal late, but that's just because Miami played late into the season. His younger brother is a freshman on the team as well, so that also helped in bringing him in from the portal.
Do you have a breakout player on the defensive side that you're really watching from the transfer portal that maybe is being slept on by Wolfpack fans right now?
Yeah, like when you look at their defensive transfer portal thing, I think I'm going to go with a guy who's played a lot of college football. Some people don't know what to expect from him, but King Mack, he transferred from Penn State. He was at Penn State his freshman year, Alabama his sophomore year, back to Penn State his junior season, now at NC State for his senior year. He's just a guy who also grew up with the contingent from Miami. I think we'll see a lot from him this season. He's the oldest safety on the team, the only senior safety on the team. The rest of them are redshirt sophomores or younger. They all played last year due to a lot of injuries. So that room's really deep. He'll be the guy that's going to mentor them going along the way. So I think his impact on and off the field will be bigger than a lot of these other portal guys, just because the fact, yes, he's going to play, but 2, he's tasked with mentoring these younger guys, getting them prepared to take that leadership role in the room for 2027 and beyond.
And defensively, as the staff gets these new players in, I mean, what's the scheme like? Does it change much with who they were able to acquire? Where do you think their strengths are now?
Yeah, DJ Elliott came in last year putting in a new scheme, going away from Tony Gibson's 3-3-5. It was a learning, curve for everybody on the roster. A lot was, him just getting his personnel in. Last year was kind of a mix of his guys and the last guys. A lot of it now is pretty much the guys he's brought in to play in the certain roles. And as we saw a year ago, when the linebacker play was good, the defense was good. Caden Ford led the ACC in tackles, came on, for the back half of the season. The defense got a lot better. I expect them to be able to build off that going into 2026. A lot of his personnel in place, especially along the defensive line and linebacker. That's kind of the biggest spot, when you change from a 3-3-5 to this, 4-2-5, ish kind of line, 3-3. It's a hybrid defense. It required new defensive linemen, new linebackers. They've got that in place now, and I think we'll see a big step from this unit in 2026.
What's the feeling around NC State and the fans and just kind of how they view this program right now going into this season?
Yeah, it's a stable program. In the ACC, Dave Doran, the second longest tenured coach in the conference behind, Dabo Swinney at Clemson. This is a team that usually wins 8-9 games a season. Last year, they won 8 games. It's kind of right on par with what we expect from NC State. Will it win 10 games is the biggest question. Will it happen this year? The schedule, it's favorable. They don't play in SMU. They don't play Miami. They don't play Clemson. So can they do it? Yes. Will they do it? That remains to be a story. They've only won 10 games once before in their program history. Phillip Rivers was that quarterback, so that tells you how long ago it was. But we'll open things up in Brazil with Virginia, and I think that'll be really exciting to see, what this team is made of. But you've got got 5 more months until we get there.
Yeah. And with that spring ball right around the corner, what are you watching, closest in spring? Do you have a couple position battles that are really standing out to you?
Yeah, it's receiving core. I think, they brought in 5 receivers. They've got a bunch of young guys on the roster too. I want to see who steps up, over this next month. They started last week. We haven't gotten to see anything yet in practice. We talked to Dave Thorne on Thursday, so we'll get a little more clarity on how things are going there. I think that'll be the biggest, question mark on the offensive side of the ball. On the defensive side, the defensive line, they're replacing all 3 starters. So I'm really intrigued to see who's stepping up. They're really, there's some young guys we're really, really excited about, including Chase Bond at defensive end. Josiah Victor played a lot as a freshman at defensive tackle. So we'll see what they do there. But, that's kind of the 2 spots I'm watching going into the season, especially at cornerback as well. We talk about Andre Evans, Brian Nelson, a former North Texas transfer, is back. So we'll see who can win these starting jobs on the outside too, because they've got jobs open, and it's time to win them in the spring.
And what is the biggest developmental area that this team has to have, that you saw was missing in 25 that can allow them to take that next step?
Yeah, it's on the defensive side, really, because the offensive scheme around TJ Bailey, it was different with Kurt Roper as offensive coordinator last year, but it was not as drastic a change from Robert and I as his defense was. So can they build off of what the last 5 games were a year ago? They closed the season really strong, bowl win over Memphis to be included. So I think that's kind of the biggest point is, can the defense continue its, upward trajectory with these new pieces? And if it does, then this is a team that can make some noise, come the end of the season.
All right. There he goes. Noah Fleischman, man. We appreciate all the help this morning breaking down NC State's offseason. And look, you've got senior night Saturday. What are your expectations for this NC State team in the ACC tournament and beyond on the basketball side of things as we get you out of here?
Yeah, as you know, Will Wade's a pretty honest guy. Called Stanford the biggest game of the season. They win, pretty much locks up their NCAA tournament bid. They should be good to go. If they lose, it makes things a little more interesting, with the bubble, maybe a trip to Dayton. Will does not want to go to Dayton. Let's just put it that way. He does not want to go to Dayton. So we'll see what happens. Biggest game of the season. I think they should be okay against Stanford. Going to the ACC tournament, if you can win a game there, especially they're going to play on Wednesday now, you have a chance to do that. Right now they'd play the winner of Stanford and Syracuse if the season ended today. So we'll see what happens there. And if they can win a game or 2 in the ACC tournament and build momentum going to the NCAA tournament, it'd be a good sign. Right now, they're sitting on a 10-seed line, which actually is more helpful for them than being on the 8-9 line that they were on for a long time over the past couple of weeks. You avoid the 1 seed. So we'll see what happens. Will, as you know, is unafraid to play anyway. So we'll see what it looks like. But this is a guy that wins in the NCAA tournament, and he's going to have that same standard for this team in year 1.
Yeah, well, best of luck. Hopefully we see you and the Wolfpack in the NCAA tournament. Would certainly help the ACC on that front. So Noah Fleischman, thanks a lot for stopping by this morning.
Thanks, Billy. Appreciate it.
Noah Fleischman of the Wolfpacker. Check out his work over there. Does a great job covering NC State for On 3 and Rivals. Good stuff over there. You can pick up a On 3 Rivals subscription today. Pick your favorite team, pick your ACC team, and jump on any of the fan sites that we have. It's a great spot to be in. Before we get to breaking down the rest of ACC basketball and the things to watch from this week that have already happened and what's ahead, we do want to remind you guys about our friends at the La La Land Foundation. As you continue on in 2026, consider getting a feel for how you can work with the La La Land Foundation, whether that be your time, whether that be helping set up a corporate partnership with the La La Land Foundation, whether that means you can go and donate money or donate things or just help out this organization. Because when you assist the La La Land Foundation, you're assisting in helping people that are going into adulthood from the foster care system better assimilate, better get a feel for what, quote unquote, the real world is like. And that's where the La La Land Foundation can really help this world that we live in be a better place. They're an extension of the La La Land Kind Cafe, so make sure you visit one today in your city. But the La La Land Foundation is a nonprofit dedicated to helping the communities where they operate in be a better place through kindness and acts of kindness. And if you can normalize that kindness you can see so much change for the better happen. And so we encourage you to go to lalalandfoundation.com, learn more about the ways you can get involved with the La La Land Foundation today. So we appreciate their partnership with us at All Access AM. Tuesday night action around the ACC had four games going on in the conference, and another four Wednesday night that we'll break down here in the implications of those. But let's start with UVA Wake Forest. Virginia escapes Wake Forest, hosting them at home 75-70. The Demon Deacons now sit at 15-15 overall, 6-11 in league play. Virginia 26-4 overall, 14-3. Tyster Ritter 16 points, able to lock up their number 2 seed in the ACC tournament with this win. And when you look at the job Ryan Odom and his staff have done this year, just incredible work. The Duke game doesn't go their way. Not really I don't want to say not competitive, but a game that clearly shows, I think, the level of where Duke is playing at. Wake Virginia kind of getting back into action at home, and having to, I think, overcome maybe a little bit of that hangover. They just slowly kind of choked out Wake Forest in this game, and now they get Virginia Tech at home. They're closing the last 2 regular season games at home, so a good situation there for them when they face Virginia Tech on Saturday. But when you look at this Virginia team and just the efficiency that they work with, it's just so impressive. And, that's the scary thing about them, is when teams get into the NCAA tournament and they don't face a team that, really is normally as efficient as Virginia is, and how defensively they can match up with just about anybody in the country because of the way they play and the attention to detail that they have. And this was even an off night, shooting for them 43% from the field. But they're able to find these ways to win for the most part that are impressive. And I talked about them kind of choking out Wake. They were just able to get enough defensively in the second half. It was not really the best effort that we've seen from a Virginia team. Maybe you could argue that they almost got comfortable, but they just have a way to press the right buttons to get it done. And so they were able to survive again when their offense not necessarily the best in terms of shooting the basketball. And, I think they just had a few miscues that Ryan Odom and his staff will work on and try to tune up before Saturday night's action against Virginia Tech. So Virginia continues to roll. For Wake Forest, they kind of sit in that purgatory. Steve Forbes coming back next year. We know that. We've talked about that. But also a job that right now, I mean, he's got to be raising money for NIL. He's got to be raising different funds for how to acquire players and how to get better, because this just right now is not going well enough for them in this new era on the basketball side of things. So it's something that's going to be an interesting fix for them this offseason and how they do things. But Wake Forest, just not good enough. And speaking of just not good enough, North Carolina beats Clemson 67-63. Clemson so close to getting this one done, but North Carolina just too much late in this one for them to pull away and come back from a halftime deficit and get a much needed win. Luka Bogovic off the bench, 20 points to lead UNC. UNC just one starter in double digits, Henry Visar with 13 on the night. Clemson got a big game from RJ Godfrey. They got a big game from Carter Welling with 13 points and 8 rebounds. But this was kind of a defensive slugfest. Both teams didn't shoot the ball particularly well. And North Carolina was just able to find a way. I saw a viral clip going. I think it was Seth Trimble with the ball and kind of, let's just say, a little bit of a, what would I say? Probably a generous extra step and pivot foot for him to get a bucket to go. It's just interesting to see the way the traveling and pivot foot and all of those things are changing in today's game and what's allowed and what's not. But college basketball is still a lot better than the NBA in that respect. But North Carolina does get the win. They improved to 24-6 overall, 12-5 in ACC play. Clemson sits at 21-9, 11-6 in ACC play. This is a big win for UNC from the perspective of tournament seeding, NCAA or ACC tournament seeding. Right now UNC now in the 4 spot, and I think barring anything else, they'll hang on to that. They'll I think it's wrapped up. I don't think there's some tiebreaker that they're going to miss out on. And with even with let's see, let's calculate the seeds right now. Yes, so even if UNC loses, let's see, run one real quick. Yes, UNC locked into the 4 seed, which is a big deal. So the top 4 seeds in the ACC are now locked in. It's Duke at number 1, Virginia at number 2, Miami at number 3, UNC at number 4. So those are your 4 buys through to the quarterfinals. So big deal for those programs as they'll get going on Thursday in the ACC tournament. Clemson in the 5th spot, locked in there, I'm pretty sure. Louisville, 10-7 overall. NC State 10-7. Cal 8-8. SMU in the 9 seed 8-8. So some things to be decided this week with some of these other games in that kind of middle of the pack, anywhere from 6 to 14, really still on the table for a lot of these teams. But I kid. But it is that kind of positioning that a lot of these teams are going through in the final game or two in some cases. But RJ Godfrey did his best to try to get Clemson there, 22 points in that game, but it just wasn't enough for Clemson, and they came up just a bit short. Clemson now closes out their regular season with a home game against Georgia Tech, so kind of an advantageous situation there for them to lock things in. And then UNC goes on the road at Duke in what will be a fun 5:30 p.m. Central Time matchup on ESPN between the Blue Devils and Tar Heels as they close out the regular season. Louisville takes care of business at home, 77-62 over Syracuse. The Cardinals improved to 21-9, 10-7 in league play. Syracuse 15-15, 6-11 in league play. Ryan Conwell had 23.7 rebounds in this one. Has just way too much at Louisville. They stifled Syracuse and held them to just 21 points in the first half, and were able to kind of coast to the win, 15-point margin of victory in this one for the Cardinals. So they take care of business. They also got 16 from Isaac McNeely. Javon Hadley had 19 as well for Louisville, as they just continue to show that when they're on, but they're also without Malik Brown. They're managing him. He was on the bike. A really, really tough situation for Louisville to be navigating down the stretch of this season as the ACC tournament approaches, and he did not play in this game, which is certainly going to raise some eyebrows. And now Louisville got to close out their regular season here with another matchup. They face Miami, so a big game in that regard. We'll see if they have Michael Brown for that one. I believe it's on the road too, so they go down to Coral Gables for that one. Virginia Tech took care of business against BC, 72-63. Boston College 10-20, 3-14 in league play. Virginia Tech 19-11 overall, 8-9 in league play. They're just shy right now of a 20-win season. They have a huge opportunity to get one when they face Virginia on the road Saturday at 11 a.m. Central on the CW. But it's a tough ask for Virginia Tech here to get that done, obviously. But if they do, they can continue to stay just within that striking distance of the NCAA tournament and kind of go and make that final push. Maybe an ACC tournament run helps them in that respect. But Virginia Tech doing what they can here late. They just seem like they're going to fall short of getting into the NCAA tournament. They've been really, really competitive throughout this regular season. I mean, you look up and down their schedule, and they've just played teams pretty competitively. I mean, not really too many, just skunk games in there outside of getting blown out by Florida State, really. If you really watched a lot of Virginia Tech's games, they just were competitive, even if they kind of ran out of gas in some of those chances that they had to play, again, really competitive games. And that's kind of the difference, wins over the field, wins when you need them to make a statement. They just didn't have them this year. And some of those games like losing to Stanford, which, we'll talk about kind of previewing the Wednesday night action, which SMU did, losing to Wake Forest. I mean, some of those losses are just going to come back and bite you now as you look at the tournament resume. I mean, if they have those 2 wins, 2 games that they lost by a combined 4 points, you're sitting here maybe talking about Virginia Tech in a different world than what we see so often in this space. So a difficult, road to getting to the NCAA tournament. A win over Virginia would maybe prop up their resume just enough, but a really tall ask here for Virginia Tech. Wednesday night ACC hoops action. You've got 4 games in competition this evening. Miami, number 22 team in the country, heads to SMU at 6 p.m. on ACC Network. Cal at Georgia Tech, 6 p.m. on ESPNU. Florida State at Pitt, 8 p.m. ACC Network. Stanford at Notre Dame at 8 p.m. on ESPNU. Let's stick here with Miami. Miami at SMU, a major contest here tonight in Moody Coliseum, will be on hand. According to ESPN's analytics, SMU favored 61% here. BJ Edwards, SMU's probably best defensive player, is going to be out for this one. He hurt his ankle, and I actually want to opine on this a little bit, but he hurt his ankle at Cal. He missed the Stanford game. SMU was not good against Stanford, just ugly, probably the ugliest performance of the Andy Anfield era. Even though they didn't have BJ Edwards, one of their key starters, that's just how I viewed it. But when you look at that road trip for SMU, I mean, just missed opportunity. 15 free throws at Cal, you lose. If you make half of them, you win. If you make 10 of them, you win comfortably over a bubble team. So you get back to being at home, and your back's against the wall. You got Boopy Miller, Jerome Pierre Jr., Samet Yigitolu's playing pretty efficiently. Then you get Malik Reneau coming in, leading that Miami team in scoring. You have this Hurricanes team that has been one of the really cool stories of the ACC this season. And for Jay Lucas and company, I mean, this would be a huge win on the road, no question about it, but an opportunity to really just pad that NCAA tournament resume. They have another opportunity on Saturday to pad that resume with Louisville coming to Coral Gables. But this is a matchup that I'm really intrigued about because you have SMU that when they've kind of gotten their backs against the wall a little bit this year, they've fought back. Now they've lost 3 of their last 5, but they were coming off of that poor stretch, and that loss to Syracuse, which was a tough one. We talked about Virginia Tech's tough losses just a moment ago. Man, that Syracuse loss, that Stanford loss, at least the Cal loss was to a bubble team. But when you look at what SMU did right after some of those setbacks, they went and beat Louisville by 10 at home. This is another matchup that, look, if SMU can get this one, then that punches their ticket to the NCAA tournament. It feels like, barring a bunch of bid stealers, I mean, they should be comfortably into the field in that sense. They are currently sitting in the last 4 buys, so that right now they're not having to go to Dayton. But if they lose this one, then it almost sets up like a winner take all type of situation when they go to Tallahassee on Saturday. And I don't think SMU wants to be in that space, because SMU has built a resume from the analytics perspective, from some of their big wins over in North Carolina, Louisville, and teams like that. And just even their losses generally outside of Stanford being close games, that they don't have many holes in their resume outside of that Stanford one, which is still a quad 1 loss. So for SMU, they really need to find a way to get this one, because they've put so much into this season. And look, this is an imperfect team that, certainly gives up a bunch of points every single night. Miami's one of the, I think, top storylines as far as turning around their defense and what they've been able to do. And they're efficient. They play the right way. They have an excitement about them, which you can tell Jay Lucas has really instilled in them. But for Miami, they've got to get this one too, just from a seeding perspective. But for SMU, this is a must get. This is going to be a game that tells you a lot about the desire of this SMU team to like fight back and show that fight. And throughout this season, they've shown that fight, but they, for whatever reason, they just looked tired on that West Coast road trip. They looked like a team that was, and their starters are playing a lot of minutes. And so I'm intrigued to see how Andy Enfield manages this team, this game against Miami, what they come up with to throw at the Hurricanes, because this is a must get. Like if SMU gets this one, you get a 20-win season, you get back, you get to the NCAA tournament. I mean, again, so much on the line in Moody Coliseum, and SMU needs some of that Moody magic tonight. And for Miami, again, you can just pad the resume. You can continue to put yourself in a prime position here. You're in the you're in the top 4 seeds of the ACC tournament. It's not necessarily even a must have. So watch to see who really comes out here with the overall just desire, the overall I think just push to get that type of a win on their resume. So I'll be keeping close eyes on this one, as we'll be in Moody Coliseum for this one this evening. The rest of Wednesday action do have Cal at Georgia Tech. Like we said, Cal has now slipped off, I think, the NCAA tournament radar. I mean, they're there. They're hanging by a thread, if anything. But when you look at what happened to them losing to Pitt over the weekend after beating SMU, just an absolutely brutal loss for Cal in that respect, because they did so much to get them in position to be a bubble team, and they are still in that next 4 out. But there's so much that would have to happen. I mean, they would have to close with 2 wins this week. They would have to make a run in the ACC tournament. Some other teams would have to crater. They're out east this week. They go at Georgia Tech tonight, and then they go at Wake Forest on Saturday. And the way Wake just played Virginia, I mean, maybe they can, continue to show that they've got that fight and they've got that ability to, just show up in that respect. But a disappointing finish for Cal, because Mark Madsen's done a really nice job getting them to 20-9. They've got a 20-win season. They're sitting in a decent spot in league play for what they've been. And if they win with the final 2 regular seasons, they can really have a lot of momentum, at least going in the ACC tournament, and maybe they can shock the world a little bit in Charlotte. So kind of a big game in that respect for Cal. Florida State at Pitt. For FSU, what they've done under Luke Locks, they've just seen this resurgence in the back half of ACC play, where they've been the hottest team in the conference, you can argue, just relative to where they were. And they finish at Pitt. So Wednesday night game here, 8 p.m. They face SMU on Saturday at home in a 1 p.m. Central Time matchup. And, again, with Luke Locks, I mean, they just really hurt themselves so much in non-conference play. They hurt themselves in league play as well early on, but they found a way to right the ship, and they found a way to get back on track. And, Robert McCray has just been so fun to watch. So we'll see how Florida State closes. I obviously expect them to beat a Pitt team that is not doing well as a whole, 11-18 on the season. But Florida State has a chance to kind of have they could really play spoiler here in the ACC tournament. They get hot, look out, because athletically they really are one of those teams that can match up at a pretty high level with a lot of teams in the ACC. So Stanford at Notre Dame, the 8 p.m. tip-off on ESPNU. I don't have too much to add there. Notre Dame made waves when they knocked off NC State over the weekend in overtime, but also, were able to beat SMU as well. Or Stanford was able to beat SMU as well. So 2 teams kind of having a little bit of a confidence boost here late, but there's not much going on in this game. A sleepy 8 p.m. Central Time tip-off in South Bend. We'll, of course, react to it on Thursday for a little bit, but not too much as far as implications go there. That's about it for ACC basketball. Let's close out with a couple things. Clemson, and this brings it back. So for those that don't know on this show, I'm from Tampa, Florida. Grew up watching the Buccaneers in the NFL. Was peak kid age when the Bucs won their first Super Bowl. And their special teams coordinator was Rich Bisaccia, and just a legend of a human being. Got to meet him a couple times when I was in high school. I was in my youth, and so I've always followed his career. He's been one of the best special teams coordinators in the, I mean, game of football for a long, long time, and he's a veteran. Well, he's coming to the ACC. He is Clemson's new special teams coordinator. This is a look. This is a major move, and I think college teams that are at a high level should do more of this. And you do it in the standpoint of, all right, we're going to bring in a NFL special teams coordinator or an NFL assistant special teams coordinator. And there are good special teams coordinators at the college level, but so many of them are built on careers of, all right, I've also got tight ends, or I've got running backs, or there's just all sorts of different, um, I guess, qualifiers for special teams coordinators. There's very few of them that are just solely dedicated to it. And now colleges, when you look at how they can manage their coaching staffs, I'm shocked we don't see more of this. Where, again, Rich Bisaccia has done so much in the NFL. He's been one of the best. He's got a great mindset about him. He's just all class guy, and Clemson nabs him. So this is a big hire for Clemson. They have an opportunity to elevate their special teams. I know, listening to our friends Kelly Gramlich and Eric McLean, that Clemson special teams at times have been an adventure. But now with Rich Bisaccia, maybe he changes the culture there, and they can put things together to make things happen. And that'll be something to certainly watch as spring unfolds, and he gets into their next phase of developing their special teams and their mindset and all of those things around Clemson special teams. So did want to note that, kind of a small world ish, looking forward to maybe reconnecting with him as he's now in college football. Let's go to this real quick. Some of the juiciest games in college football. Ari Wasserman of On3 dropped his top 10 list, and some of them, of course, involve ACC teams. His third most juicy game of the college football season. And look, I would argue that this could be number two if you think about it, but there's no arguing with number one, which is LSU at Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin going back to Oxford. But number two is Ohio State at Texas. Number three, Miami at Notre Dame. I've got to think, just from what happened to each of these teams. I know there's questions around Ohio State, Texas, as far as should they be playing. Obviously, it's Ohio State versus Texas, but let's also reset a little bit here and recognize that Miami played for a national championship. Notre Dame's been incredibly, consistent under Marcus Freeman, and has kind of elevated each year under him in a sense, as far as their recruiting and just them as a program. Like, I view Notre Dame a little differently than I did probably 5 years ago. I would put Miami at Notre Dame at number two. I think you're splitting hairs there. But as far as juicy, like, when I hear that, I hear, okay, we're probably in for some fireworks pregame, maybe, meeting of the minds at midfield. You're in for some chippiness. You're also in for a good football game, but you also have the storylines around this one that really pop off to me. Miami took Notre Dame's spot and went and played for a national championship. Notre Dame opted out, caused a whole bunch of chaos around the overall situation with bowl games and how they're viewed. And a lot of people have jumped on the anti-Notre Dame bandwagon, even more so because of that. But you also have Notre Dame fans who, obviously one of the most rabid fan bases in the country, widespread fan bases, all-encompassing fan bases of sorts across America and the world, and they're a global brand. So you have all of those coming together November 7th in South Bend in a game that is not in September. It's not your season opener. It is in prime college football playoff resume building mode. Notre Dame gets this win. You got to assume, with the schedule they have, they're sitting pretty for a college football playoff berth. Miami gets this win. You're probably feeling pretty good about what Miami's put together on the field, and they're back in for the college football playoff. So there's tons of implications around that. And Notre Dame, this is one of, BYU, SMU, kind of their other resume building opportunities of this season for Notre Dame. Notre Dame has to have this one. The stakes are high. It's going to be chilly. It might not be snowy, most likely, but it's going to be chilly up in South Bend for this one. Wouldn't shock me if we saw like a college game day appearance. This could be a big, big game for tons of reasons, but it was included in Ari Wasserman's juiciest games of the regular season. And another sleeper here, and you can go check out the full list. I don't want to call it a sleeper, but everybody obviously is in ACC country got this one circled. Duke at Miami. Darian Mensah obviously goes down to Coral Gables. This would only be better if it was flipped, right? You could make the argument that since it's in Miami, since it's a controlled environment in Hard Rock Stadium, that it's not as juicy. But man, the storylines around Darian Mensah, especially with where this game is, November 17th. Could you imagine if Manny Diaz and company pull off a win at Miami and somehow it keeps them out of the college football playoff, or it keeps them out of the ACC championship? Because of course we're waiting on the ACC on the tiebreaker side of things. But if Duke can pull off an upset at Miami, oh boy, does this get better. The only way this game is more juicy is if it's at Duke. It's at Miami. I think that's what keeps it down the list a little bit. But the intrigue around this one, hopefully for Walker Eget, he's healthy, he's rolling at this point. He's comfortable in Johnny Brewer's offense. And hopefully we get the game we deserve in this one. This could be one of two ways. You could see the class of Miami's player and program that they're building be on full display in Coral Gables on November 17th, or you could see the grit and the toughness of Duke's program under Manny Diaz and how they fought through the adversity of losing their quarterback and showing what they can do when they're locked in and ready to roll. Their margin for error isn't as slim as is slimmer than Miami's in games across their season, because we know what they've lost in Darian Mensah and Cooper Barcate. Those are key pieces. But when you look at this game, you got to throw out the record books when they meet November 17th. So it's going to be really interesting. But hope you guys enjoyed today's show. We are going to have Jamie Shaw of On3 to break down the latest in ACC basketball. Some of his really in-depth scouting notes on teams across the ACC that are headed to postseason play. We'll break that down on Thursday. And we also might have some more spring and off-season conversation around another ACC program. We're trying to book a guest here for that, and we'll look around the league once again. But hope you guys enjoyed this show. Have a great Wednesday night watching ACC Hoops, and we'll catch you Thursday morning, 8 to 9 a.m. Central Time on All Access AM. I'm Billy Embody. Thanks for watching, everyone. Catch you next time.